This will be for the con exercise, isolating quantities advanced. Now, in these problems, you can certainly read the write-up, all right? But if you look at the answers, many times that will reveal what you're trying to solve for, okay? Really, if you just look at the last sentence, which of the following correctly expresses P in terms of Q? I'm kind of looking at answer C and D because it has P equals and it has the Q on the other side. So let's see what happens if we attempt to solve for P, all right? Maybe we can get it, or maybe we'll get one of these. Let's try it. All right, so we're trying to solve for P. Since we have P squared here, we clearly have a quadratic. Okay, in order to solve a quadratic, you have to set it equal to 0. All right, you know what? Before I set it equal to 0, I see this is factorable as is. Let's see if we can get somewhere with this here. There's a formula for this here in algebra. If you have a plus b squared, that equals a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Okay, so that's clearly what we have here, with the a being P and the b being the Q. All right, you know what? Let me reverse this so I can line it up. All right, so this formula is from algebra. A plus b squared equals this, so we can clearly see the a is P, and we can see the b is Q. All right, so a plus b squared, that's going to be P plus Q squared. And that whole thing equals 1. Okay, I believe this was one of the answers. I am not sure if they would accept it because they asked us to solve for P in terms of Q. All right, so even though I was able to factor, I suspect this is not correct. So let me just try it. Okay, there you go. So it does not solve for P. All right, excellent. So just like I thought, we need to do one of these answers right here. These are the only two with P equals. Instead of going through all that nonsense, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to sub in negative Q in place of P. If negative Q in place of P doesn't work, then I know it's answer C because it is the only other one that has P equals. So let's try to plug in negative Q in place of P. All right, wherever we see a P, we're going to plug in negative Q. So right here, we're going to do negative Q quantity squared plus 2 times negative Q times Q plus Q squared equals 1. All right, we want to see if this works. Negative Q squared is negative Q times negative Q. That's positive Q squared. Here we have Q times Q, which is Q squared, and the negative sign goes in front of the 2. All right, these are all multiplied. So 2 times negative Q is negative 2Q times Q again is Q squared. And here we have plus Q squared. And that equals 1. All right, this is 1Q squared, this is 1Q squared. 1Q squared plus 1Q squared is 2Q squared minus Q squared minus 2Q squared equals 0. Okay, does 0 equal 1? No. All right, so clearly it is the other one, the other answer, and the other answer had a plus 1. If we had a plus 1 here, it would work. So that's how we know the other answer is correct. Answer C, negative Q plus 1. All right, like I said, you usually don't need to read the write-ups. We have R equals radical x squared plus y squared. Which of the following gives a possible value of x in terms of R and y? So clearly we are solving for x. We need x equals. All right, we do have that on all of the answers. So let's solve for x. Original was r equals radical x squared plus y squared. Solving for x, the opposite of square root, the way to undo that is to square both sides. So I'm going to square this here, this entire right-hand side, and I am going to square the r as well. All right, r squared is just r squared. And if you take the square root and square it, it just undoes the square root. So we are just left with x squared plus y squared. Solving for x, the opposite of positive y squared is negative y squared. All right, those cancel on the right. We're left with r squared minus y squared equals x squared. Finally, last step, solving for x, the opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. All right, square root of something squared is just that number. So square root of x squared is just x. Nothing we can do here, so we leave that as radical r squared minus y squared. And by the way, when you take the square root of both sides, on the solution side, you're supposed to do plus minus. I'm not sure if they're going to have that in the answer, but you're supposed to do plus minus on the solution side. So that right there should be the final answer. X equals radical r squared minus y squared. X equals radical r squared minus y squared. All right, here's the original right here. This g, by the way, is in the numerator. It's the same thing as if it were on top in the numerator. Anyhow, we have f equals, which of the following is the correct expression for mass, lowercase m, in terms of the other terms? All right, look at the answers. They are all m equals. All right, so clearly we're solving for m. You don't really need the write-up. So let's solve for lowercase m. All right, so this was the original. And like I said, this g is multiplied by this fraction. So g is really in the numerator. Let's rewrite it with g in the numerator. We have g times m, capital M, times lowercase m, divided by r squared. All right, we're solving for lowercase m. So we have lowercase m times capital GM. All right, these are all multiplied. Now, we want to get rid of capital GM, and we're isolating lowercase m. The opposite of times GM is divided by GM. All right, so we're going to do that to both sides of the equal sign. Now, I know it looks like I multiplied, but I put GM in the denominator. We're dividing by GM. I'm going to make a fraction here. All right, GM divided by GM cancels, and we're left with m divided by r squared. The opposite of divided by r squared is times r squared. We're going to do that to both sides. R squared divided by r squared cancels. So notice we just multiplied by the reciprocal. We had GM over r squared. We multiplied by r squared over GM. I just took the reciprocal. If you want to see me do this another way, I'll show you real quick. All right, this is probably better. We're trying to find lowercase m. If you take this whole fraction right here, m is times this fraction, okay? And if we want to get rid of this fraction, you just multiply by the reciprocal. So GM over r squared becomes r squared over GM. All right, I just multiplied by the reciprocal, and do the same thing to both sides. GM over GM cancels, r squared over r squared cancels. M equals this mess right here. It's going to be f times r squared in the numerator. And that is divided by capital GM in the denominator, and that is your lowercase m. They might have the answer so the f is out front, but like I said, that's really just the same thing. All right, FR squared over GM. Answer C, FR squared over GM. All right, last one. We have R equals here with two variables. And what do they want us to do? Average number of syllables per word, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Okay, good. They are all S equals. So we are clearly solving for S. That's why I don't have to read the write-up. It's all S equals. All right, let's take this and solve for S. All right, solving for S. Remember I said I like to keep the coefficient in front of the variable positive. So I'm going to get this term on the left-hand side and make it positive. The opposite of negative 84.6 S is positive 84.6 S. It cancels here. All right, we have R plus 84.6. I'll rewrite it so you don't get confused. All right, R plus 84.6 S. And that equals this mess here, 206.835 minus 101.015 W. All right, so we are solving for S. The opposite of plus R is minus R. You want to do that to both sides of the equal sign, and it cancels here. Here we have S times 84.6. The opposite of times 84.6 is divided by 84.6. We do that to both sides. Cancels here. This right here is your final answer. S equals 206.835 minus this mess here. Okay, the numerator might be in a different order. Let's check. Our denominator should be 84.6. So let's check it out. Okay, they only have one answer where the common denominator is 84.6, but it's negative. Okay, ours was positive. So if you put a negative in the denominator, you just change the plus minus sign on each term in the numerator. Let's do that on our answer and see if it matches this one. All right, if we make this negative right here, then the 206 becomes negative, the 1.1015 becomes positive, and the R becomes positive. So let's see if this answer matches the one we had. I think it was answer D. Negative 206 plus 1 plus R. Let's try it. Negative 206 plus 1 plus R. There you go, answer D. All right, so sometimes you may have to change the form your answer is in order to choose the correct one.